Here's a possible introduction for your YouTube video story. The soccer field was buzzing with life on that crisp Saturday morning. Just like any other weekend. Parents lined the sidelines, chatting and sipping coffee, while kids stretched and passed the ball, their laughter blending with the faint whistle of the wind. Among the players was Barron, tall for his age, with an effortless confidence that made him stand out even in a crowd. But today, something was different. All eyes seemed to be on him, not for his skill, but for the bright red MAGA hat perched on his head. Barron had always been a quiet kid, the kind who let his actions speak louder than his words. On the field, he was a natural leader, steering his team with precision and focus. Off the field, he was polite and reserved, never one to seek the spotlight. But that morning the hat, a simple piece of cloth embroidered with a slogan, seemed to eclipse everything else about him. The coach, a passionate and vocal figure in the community, had a reputation for being firm but fair. Coach Daniels believed in discipline, unity, and leaving politics off the field. He had spent years building a team that thrived on collaboration and mutual respect. But when he saw Barron warming up with that hat, his face tightened. Walking across the field with measured steps, Coach Daniels called for a pause. The players froze mid-practice, sensing the tension. Barron turned to face the coach, his expression calm, but his grip tightening on the ball. "What's with the hat, Barron?" Coach Daniels asked, his tone even but unmistakably firm. "It's just a hat, Coach," Barron replied, his voice steady. "Not here, it's not," Coach Daniels shot back. "We're here to play soccer, not make statements." The exchange drew murmurs from the sidelines. Some parents looked away, pretending not to notice, while others leaned in, their curiosity piqued. Barron, unfazed, stood his ground. "I'm not trying to make a statement," he said, his voice carrying a mix of determination and restraint. "It's just who I am." Coach Daniels sighed, clearly wrestling with his emotions. After a long pause, he made his decision. "If you want to stay on this team, you take off the hat. Otherwise, you're benched." The field fell silent. Barron looked at the coach, then at his teammates, who avoided his gaze. Slowly, he removed the hat, handing it to his mother, who had been watching from the sidelines. But the tension lingered thick and unspoken. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Barron sat alone in his room, the hat on his desk. His phone buzzed with messages, some supportive, others not. But instead of feeling defeated, Barron felt something else stir within him. What happened next would leave the entire community questioning their values, their biases, and what it truly means to stand up for what you believe in. This introduction sets the stage for the story, weaving in suspense and emotion, while keeping the tone respectful and human-focused. It leaves the audience eager to know how Barron's next steps will impact everyone around him. That night, Barron couldn't stop thinking about what had happened on the field. It wasn't just about the hat. It felt bigger than that. He replayed the scene over and over in his head, wondering if he had made the right choice by taking it off. His mom had tried to comfort him on the way home, telling him he had done the mature thing by avoiding a fight. But deep down, Barron felt like he had compromised something important, something that went beyond a piece of clothing. His phone buzzed again, pulling him out of his thoughts. It was a text from Jake, one of his closest teammates. "Hey man, just wanted to say I think what happened today was messed up. You didn't deserve that." Barron smiled faintly. At least someone understood. He typed back a quick thanks, but before he could put his phone down, another message came in. This one wasn't so kind. "You think you're special or something because of your dad. Leave your politics at home." Barron stared at the screen, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. He wasn't trying to make a scene. The hat was just a part of who he was, like how some kids wore their favorite team's jersey or a necklace that meant something to them. Why was it so different for him? The next day at school, the whispers started before he even got to his locker. Some kids nodded at him in solidarity, while others snickered behind his back. A few outright avoided him, like his presence was suddenly controversial. It was exhausting, and by lunchtime, Barron felt drained. He sat alone at a table, poking at his food, when Jake slid into the seat across from him. "Crazy how people are acting, huh?" Jake said, leaning in. Barron nodded but didn't say much. He appreciated Jake's support, but he wasn't in the mood to talk. "You know," Jake continued, "my dad always says that people only get this mad when they're scared. Maybe you hit a nerve." Barron looked up, surprised. He hadn't thought about it that way. But Jake's words stuck with him, and by the time he got home, they had sparked an idea. Barron decided to write down his thoughts, not to share with anyone, at least not yet, but just to sort through everything swirling in his head. He grabbed a notebook and started jotting down what he felt, what he believed, and why he had worn the hat in the first place. As the days passed, the situation at soccer practice didn't improve. Coach Daniels kept things professional but distant, like there was an invisible wall between them. Some teammates followed the coach's lead, treating Barron like he was radioactive. Others, like Jake, stayed by his side, but even they seemed unsure of what to do. Meanwhile, the parents in the community were divided. Some thought the coach had overstepped, turning what should have been a neutral space into a battleground. Others believed he had done the right thing, keeping personal beliefs out of the game. The tension grew with every passing day, and soon it wasn't just about Barron or the team. It was about what the community stood for. One evening, Barron overheard his mom on the phone. She was talking to his dad, her voice low but intense. "I don't know what to do," she said. "He's just a kid, but they're treating him like he's the problem. It's not fair." Barron felt a pang of guilt. He didn't want to be a burden, but he also couldn't shake the feeling that this was bigger than him. A few days later, during practice, Coach Daniels called for a team meeting. The players gathered in a huddle, curious about what was going on. The coach cleared his throat, looking more serious than usual. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened last week," he began, glancing briefly at Barron. "And I want to remind everyone that this team is about unity. We leave everything else off the field." Barron felt his stomach tighten. Was this another subtle jab at him? But before Coach Daniels could continue, Jake spoke up. "Coach, can I say something?" The coach hesitated but eventually nodded. Jake stood up, his voice steady but loud enough for everyone to hear. "I think unity isn't about pretending we're all the same. It's about respecting each other's differences." Barron wasn't trying to cause problems. He just wanted to be himself. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone, including the coach, seemed caught off guard. That night, word of Jake's speech spread quickly. Parents talked about it over dinner, kids posted about it online, and the story began to take on a life of its own. Some praised Jake for his courage, while others criticized him for stirring the pot. But one thing was clear. The community was no longer just whispering about Barron. They were debating what his situation meant for everyone. Barron, meanwhile, felt a mix of gratitude and nervousness. Jake's words had given him a sense of validation, but they had also turned the spotlight back on him. He knew he couldn't stay silent forever. If this was going to keep growing, he had to find a way to take control of the narrative. As he stared at the notebook on his desk, now filled with pages of his thoughts and feelings, an idea began to form. It was bold, maybe even risky, but it felt right. For the first time in days, Barron felt a spark of hope. Little did he know, his next move would set off a chain of events that no one in the community could have anticipated. Barron spent the next few days refining his plan. He decided that staying silent wasn't an option anymore. Not if he wanted people to understand his side of the story. After all, this wasn't just about a hat or a soccer game. It was about something deeper: respect, individuality, and finding common ground in a divided world. Using the notes in his journal, Barron wrote a letter addressed to his team, the parents, and the community. In it, he explained why he wore the hat that day, not to provoke anyone, but simply because it represented a part of who he was. He wrote about how the incident had made him feel, the weight of being judged not for his actions, but for what others assumed about him. Most importantly, he talked about the value of differences and how they could strengthen a team rather than divide it. His mom helped him type it up, and Jake encouraged him to share it with everyone. So, with a deep breath and a bit of courage, Barron emailed the letter to the team's group chat and posted it to a community forum online. The response was overwhelming. Parents, teammates, and even strangers began sharing the letter, praising Barron for his honesty and maturity. Some admitted they had been too quick to judge, while others said his words made them reconsider how they approached difficult conversations. The letter spread beyond the local community, catching the attention of a regional news outlet, which ran a feature on the story. Coach Daniels read the letter too. It was clear that Barron's words had struck a chord with him. At the next practice, he pulled Barron aside. "Barron," the coach began, his voice softer than usual, "I owe you an apology. I was wrong to single you out like that. I thought I was protecting the team, but I see now that I wasn't being fair to you." Barron didn't know what to say at first. He had braced himself for more conflict, not an apology. But as he looked at the coach, he could see the sincerity in his eyes. "Thank you, Coach," Barron finally said. "I just want us to move forward together." That weekend, the team played their first game since the incident. Barron walked onto the field, feeling lighter than he had in weeks. He wasn't wearing the hat, not because he had been told not to, but because he had chosen to focus on what brought them all together, the game. As the final whistle blew, and the team celebrated their hard-fought victory, Barron noticed something surprising. Coach Daniels walked up to him, holding something in his hand. It was a simple blank red cap. "This is just a hat," the coach said with a smile, handing it to Barron. "But what it represents depends on the person wearing it. And today, it represents you, a kid who stood up for what he believed in, even when it wasn't easy." Barron took the hat, feeling a wave of emotion. It wasn't about politics or slogans anymore. It was about the lesson they had all learned together. The incident that had started as a source of division ended up bringing the community closer. Parents began talking more openly about teaching their kids to respect different perspectives. The team grew stronger, not just as players, but as people who had learned to value each other's differences. As for Barron, he didn't just regain his place on the team. He earned their respect in a way that would last far beyond the soccer field. And in a quiet moment after the game, as he watched his teammates laugh and celebrate, he realized that sometimes standing up for what you believe in doesn't just change how others see you, it changes how you see yourself. The story of Barron Trump and the red hat wasn't about winning or losing. It was about understanding growth and finding unity in unexpected places. And that's a story worth remembering.